Who told you that you were late? The invisible clock that stole your peace. Every generation inherits something from the one before it. Sometimes it's wisdom, sometimes it's courage, sometimes it's painful lessons that should have never been passed down in the first place. One of the most dangerous inheritances isn't money, politics, religion, or even culture. It's the quiet belief that life has a schedule that everyone must follow. It's the unspoken idea that if you haven't reached certain milestones by a certain age, you've somehow failed. It's a lie that has been repeated so often that millions accept it without ever questioning where it came from. Most people never wake up one morning and consciously decide to compare themselves to everyone around them. It's a habit that slowly grows inside the mind. It starts with innocent questions during childhood. Who got the better grades? Who made the team? Who bought the bigger house? Who got married first? Who retired earlier? Before long, those harmless comparisons become the measuring stick for an entire lifetime. Eventually, you stop living your own story because you're too busy grading it against someone else's. That's exactly how invisible prisons are built. They don't need steel bars or locked doors. They only need your agreement. Once you accept someone else's timeline as the standard for your life, you've surrendered something priceless without even realizing it. You've handed over your peace of mind to people who aren't living your life, carrying your burdens, or facing your battles. The saddest part is that many people don't even recognize this silent theft. They believe the pressure they're feeling comes from ambition. They think the anxiety means they're motivated. They mistake exhaustion for discipline. But underneath all of it sits a much darker truth. They're no longer chasing their own purpose. They're chasing approval from a society that changes its standards every single day. I've watched this happen to people from every background imaginable. Rich people feel behind. Poor people feel behind. Young people believe they're already too old. Older people believe their opportunities have expired. It doesn't matter how much someone has accomplished because the invisible clock never allows them to rest. Every achievement immediately becomes yesterday's news, and another imaginary deadline appears on the horizon. Most people blame the clock for their unhappiness. They say there aren't enough hours in the day. They complain that life moves too fast. They wish they can turn back the hands of time and start over. But time isn't the real enemy. Comparison is. Time has never judged anyone. A clock has never laughed because you earned your first degree at 50 instead of 22. A calendar has never mocked someone who found true love later on in life. The seasons don't care whether you became successful at 25 or 75. Nature doesn't recognize human deadlines because they were never written into creation. Human beings invented those deadlines. Someone decided there was an acceptable age to become wealthy. Someone else decided when you should own a home. Another person created expectations about marriage, children, retirement, education, careers, and every other milestone people now obsess over. None of these ideas came stamped with universal truth. Yet, they've been accepted as though they were laws carved into stone. What's amazing is how willingly people surrender to these unwritten rules. They'll spend decades chasing goals they never truly desired simply because everyone around them seems to be chasing the same things. They never stop long enough to ask whether the race even belongs to them. That's where so much hidden pain begins. It's not the missed promotion that hurts the most. It's seeing someone else receive one first. It's not the size of your home that keeps you awake at night. It's believing someone your age owns something bigger. It's not your paycheck that destroys your confidence. It's discovering someone younger earns twice as much. Notice what's happening. Your emotions aren't responding to your actual life anymore. They're responding to somebody else's highlight reel. That's why social media has become one of the most powerful psychological weapons ever created. It's not simply because people post beautiful vacations, expensive cars, luxury homes, or smiling family portraits. It's because your mind quietly accepts those carefully edited moments as evidence of how life is supposed to look. You scroll through hundreds of polished images every day, and without realizing it, you begin writing an invisible report card on your own existence. Every photograph becomes another silent comparison. Every celebration becomes another reminder of what you think you're missing. Every success story becomes another reason to doubt your own journey. After enough repetition, something dangerous happens. You stop experiencing your own life. Instead, you begin evaluating it. Every birthday becomes less about gratitude and more about calculation. Every new year becomes another reminder of unfinished goals. Every achievement is celebrated for only a few moments before your attention shifts towards someone who appears to have accomplished something greater. That's a miserable way to exist. Imagine finishing a marathon only to discover you've spent the entire race looking into someone else's lane instead of appreciating the distance you've already traveled. That's exactly how millions of people are living. They're reaching goals they once prayed for, yet they never feel fulfilled because their eyes remain fixed on somebody else's finish line. What's even more heartbreaking is that the finish line keeps moving. The moment you reach one level of success, another standard appears. The promotion isn't enough because someone became vice president. The new business isn't enough because another company made more money. The happy relationship isn't enough because another couple looks happier online. The comparison never ends because it was never designed to end. It's a treadmill powered by insecurity, and the faster you run, the faster it runs with you. That's why so many people feel exhausted even when they're winning. Their victories don't belong to them anymore. Their accomplishments have become temporary distractions before the next wave of self-doubt crashes over their minds. That's not success. That's psychological captivity. And the saddest part is that most people don't even know they're in prison because they've decorated the walls of the cell with achievements, possessions, titles, and applause. The prison still remains, even if it's beautifully furnished. One of the greatest psychological traps ever created isn't built with walls, chains, or locked doors. It's built with expectations. Somewhere along the way, most of us accepted the belief that there is a universal timetable for becoming successful, falling in love, raising a family, discovering our purpose, and finally feeling fulfilled. We rarely stop to question where this timetable came from because it has been repeated so often that it feels like common sense. Yet, when you strip away the opinions, the traditions, and the endless pressure of society, something remarkable becomes clear. There has never been a single calendar capable of measuring the value of a human life. There has only been an endless collection of people insisting that their version of the journey should become everyone else's. That's the dangerous part about inherited beliefs. We often mistake familiarity for truth. If an idea has surrounded us since childhood, we naturally assume it must be correct. We hear relatives compare siblings, teachers compare classmates, employers compare workers, and entire communities compare lifestyles. Before we know it, comparison becomes as natural as breathing. We no longer recognize it as something we've learned because it is blended into the background of everyday life. That's how powerful conditioning works. It doesn't force itself upon you all at once. It settles quietly into your thinking until it begins making decisions on your behalf without asking your permission. What's even more disturbing is that the standards themselves never stop changing. A generation ago, success looked one way. Today, it looks completely different. Tomorrow, it will change again. Entire industries are built on convincing you that whatever you are in life isn't enough. If your home is comfortable, someone will tell you that it should be larger. If your career is stable, someone will insist you should be earning more. If your family brings you peace, someone else will suggest you haven't experienced enough excitement. The destination keeps moving because dissatisfaction has become one of the most profitable products ever sold. When you begin to recognize this pattern, something profound starts to happen. You realize that much of the anxiety you've been carrying wasn't born from your own dreams. It grew from expectations that never truly belonged to you. You've been trying to satisfy voices that may not even remember your name tomorrow. That's a heartbreaking way to spend the limited time you've been given, especially when your own purpose has been patiently waiting beneath all that noise. Comparison isn't evil by itself. Throughout human history, it helped people learn, adapt, and survive. Watching someone with greater experience can teach valuable skills. Seeing another person's wisdom could inspire growth. Healthy comparison encouraged improvement because it remained connected to reality. It wasn't about destroying your sense of worth. It was about expanding your understanding of what was possible. Today's world has transformed that healthy instinct into something almost unrecognizable. Instead of comparing ourselves to a handful of people whose lives we genuinely understand, we're comparing ourselves to thousands of carefully selected moments from strangers we'll never meet. Every scroll introduces another highlight, another celebration, another polished image that appears to confirm everyone else is living a more exciting, successful, or meaningful life. Our minds absorb those images one after another until they quietly become the standard against which we measure ourselves. The problem isn't simply that these images are incomplete. It's that our minds unconsciously complete the missing pieces. We assume that wealth automatically brings peace. We assume recognition guarantees happiness. We assume influence removes insecurity. We see a smiling photograph and imagine an entire life without disappointment, struggle, loneliness, or fear. Then we turn around and compare that imagined reality against every painful detail of our own lives. From the very beginning, the comparison was never fair because one side of the scale contains your complete story while the other contains only someone else's carefully edited moments. That's why so many people wake up feeling inadequate without being able to explain exactly why. Nothing catastrophic has happened. Their families may love them. Their health may be improving. Their careers may be progressing. Yet, an invisible dissatisfaction continues whispering that they should somehow be further ahead. It isn't because they've honestly examined their own journey and found it lacking. It's because they've unknowingly accepted someone else's journey as the measuring stick for their own. Once you begin living according to another person's timeline, your victories become strangely difficult to enjoy. The moment you accomplish one goal, your attention immediately shifts toward the next person who appears to have accomplished even more. Satisfaction becomes temporary because your standard of success is no longer rooted in your own growth. It's rooted in somebody else's position. That's why so many remarkable achievements leave people feeling strangely empty. It's not because the accomplishment lacked value. It's because they arrived carrying expectations that no achievement could ever satisfy. They believed the promotion would finally silence their doubts. They believed the new home would finally make them feel secure. They believed the recognition would finally erase years of uncertainty. Instead, they discovered that the voice demanding more had simply followed them to every new destination. I've come to believe that this is one of the greatest emotional epidemics of our time. People aren't merely exhausted from working hard. They're exhausted from chasing moving targets that are designed to remain out of reach. They're running races whose finish lines keep shifting further away every time they get close. Under those conditions, success begins to feel less like a celebration and more like another obligation. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is that while people are busy trying to catch someone else's schedule, they quietly abandon the unique rhythm of their own lives. They overlook the wisdom gained through setbacks, the strength developed through delays, and the unexpected opportunities that often appear only after carefully crafted plans fall apart. Looking backward, many of the moments that once felt like devastating detours later revealed themselves to be the very experiences that shaped character, sharpened discernment, and prepared them for opportunities they couldn't have imagined. That's why the real measure of a meaningful life has never been speed. It's always been growth, purpose, and the courage to keep walking your own path long after the world has tried to convince you to follow someone else's. One of the greatest illusions of modern life is the belief that other people are living complete lives simply because we are constantly shown their happiest moments. We've become a society that mistakes carefully selected snapshots for complete biographies. Every day, we're invited into thousands of living rooms, vacations, business victories, celebrations, smiling photographs. Yet we're almost never shown the doubts that came before them or the sacrifices that made them possible. That's why so many people quietly conclude that everyone else has figured life out. while they're the only ones still struggling. It's not because everybody else is happier. It's because pain has never been as remarkable as success, and vulnerability rarely receives the same applause as achievement. The human mind fills in the missing information without asking permission. When we see someone standing at what appears to be the top of the mountain, we instinctively imagine peace waiting there. We assume financial success eliminates worry. We assume popularity removes loneliness. We assume recognition guarantees fulfillment. In reality, every destination carries its own burdens, its own fears, and its own private battles that seldom make it to the public view. Every accomplishment comes attached to sacrifices that outsiders rarely witness. That's why comparing your private reality to someone else's public presentation will always produce a distorted conclusion. You're measuring your entire life against a version of theirs that was edited before you ever saw it. What's even more deceptive is that this illusion doesn't require anyone to intentionally deceive you. Most people naturally share the moments they're proud of. They celebrate birthdays instead of arguments. They post graduations instead of sleepless nights. They capture vacations instead of the months spent worrying about paying for them. They share promotions but rarely reveal the years of rejection, disappointment, and uncertainty that came before them. None of that makes them dishonest. It simply means you're looking through a window that was never designed to show the entire house. Our culture has become obsessed with outcomes while paying very little attention to the journey that produced them. We admire the finest building without asking about the years spent laying the foundation. We applaud the polished performance while overlooking the countless hours of practice, failure, frustration, and self-doubt that made it possible. Success has become something we consume as entertainment instead of understanding it as a process. That's why so many people develop unrealistic expectations for their own lives. They see someone standing at the finish line without realizing how many times that person wanted to quit along the way. They admire confidence without seeing the insecurity that had to be confronted. They envy financial freedom without recognizing the risks, setbacks, and lonely seasons that came first. Every meaningful accomplishment carries a price, but the price rarely receives the same attention as the reward. The danger isn't admiration itself. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by another person's discipline or perseverance. The danger begins when admiration quietly transforms into self-condemnation. Instead of saying, "That's inspiring," we begin saying, "Why haven't I done that yet?" Instead of appreciating another person's journey, we use it as evidence that our own journey must somehow be inadequate. That's where inspiration dies and insecurity takes its place. Now, I've noticed that many people spend years chasing another person's destination without ever asking themselves whether they would be willing to pay the price required to reach it. They admire the applause, but not the isolation. They desire the recognition, but not the sacrifices. They want the results without fully understanding the road that produced them. That's why so many dreams collapse under the weight of unrealistic expectations. We fall in love with appearances while remaining unfamiliar with the process that created them. Perhaps the most liberating truth you'll ever embrace is that your life was never intended to unfold as a copy of someone else's. From the moment you entered this world, your experiences, opportunities, disappointments, relationships, and lessons began forming a story unlike any other. No one has carried your exact burdens. No one has faced your exact decisions. No one has stood at every crossroads where you've been forced to choose between fear and faith. Why, then, would you expect your journey to arrive at the same destinations according to someone else's timetable? The pressure to imitate another person's life often causes people to overlook the extraordinary value of their own experiences. Delays begin to feel like failures instead of preparation. Closed doors are viewed as permanent defeats instead of necessary redirections. Seasons of waiting become sources of shame rather than opportunities for growth. Yet, when many people look back over their lives with honesty, they discover that some of their greatest blessings were born from plans that didn't work out the way they originally imagined. How about that? It's easy to celebrate success when the path has been smooth, but character is usually formed somewhere else. It's shaped in the moments when life refuses to cooperate with our expectations. It's developed during the seasons when progress appears painfully slow. It's strengthened through disappointments that eventually reveal lessons impossible to learn any other way. Those difficult chapters rarely feel meaningful while we're living through them, yet they often become the very experiences that prepare us for everything that follows. That's why it's so dangerous to declare yourself behind simply because your journey doesn't resemble someone else's. You may actually be standing in the exact season your life requires. Even if it feels uncomfortable, growth doesn't always announce itself with applause. Sometimes it arrives disguised as delay, uncertainty, or unexpected change. Only with time do we recognize that what once looked like an interruption was actually preparation for a future we couldn't yet see. One of the quietest tragedies in modern society is that people spend more time evaluating their lives than actually experiencing them. Every birthday becomes an inspection. Every accomplishment becomes a statistic. Every new opportunity is weighed against what somebody else has already achieved, instead of asking whether they're becoming wiser, kinder, stronger, or more fulfilled. Many people only ask whether they're ahead or behind. That's a heartbreaking exchange because it reduces an extraordinary human life to nothing more than a scoreboard. Life was never designed to be lived from the sidelines. It was meant to be experienced one decision, one lesson, one relationship, and one season at a time. The value of your existence cannot be measured by someone else's accomplishments because your purpose was never assigned to another person. The moment you stop chasing another individual's timeline, you create room to appreciate the progress you've actually made. You begin noticing strengths that hardship produced, wisdom that mistakes revealed, and resilience that comfort could never have developed. That's the moment real freedom begins. Not when you finally outrun everyone else, but when you no longer believe you have to. After everything we've explored, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The greatest deception was never convincing you that time moves too quickly. It was convincing you that your value decreases as time passes. Those are two very different ideas, yet most people spend their entire lives treating them as though they are one and the same. The clock itself has never judged you. The calendar has never looked down on your dreams. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow carry no opinions of their own. They are simply measurements of passing moments. It's people who attach shame to birthdays, deadlines to happiness, and expiration dates to ambition. That's why so many individuals carry around a guilt they struggle to explain. It isn't necessarily guilt over bad decisions or missed opportunities. It's the burden of believing they should have arrived somewhere else by now. They replay old choices, wondering what life might have looked like if they had taken another job, moved to another city, pursued another relationship, or taken a different risk years earlier. They imagine an alternate version of themselves living a perfect existence, never stopping to consider that every life, including the one they envy, carries its own hidden disappointments and unanswered questions. Looking backward with perfect hindsight creates an illusion that never existed in real life. It's easy to connect the dots after the picture has already been completed. It's much harder to appreciate that uncertainty was always part of the journey. Every meaningful life contains wrong turns, unexpected delays, painful losses, and moments when the future seemed impossible to understand. Those experiences weren't evidence that life had gone off course. More often than not, they became the very experiences that developed wisdom, resilience, humility, and compassion. Remove every setback from your past, and you don't simply erase pain, you erase the person that pain helped shape. That's why I've become increasingly convinced that many people aren't actually grieving lost time. They're grieving an imaginary version of life that never had the chance to exist. They've fallen in love with a fantasy built from selective memories, unrealistic expectations, and comparisons that were never fair to begin with. Meanwhile, the real life unfolding before them continues waiting for their full attention. There comes a point when every person must decide whether they'll continue living according to someone else's expectations or finally embrace the life that has been unfolding beneath their feet all along. That decision isn't always dramatic. There are no fireworks, no grand announcements, and no audience applauding your courage. More often, it's a quiet realization that you no longer wish to spend your days proving your worth to people who were never responsible for defining it in the first place. That's a liberating discovery, because it changes the questions you begin asking yourself. Instead of wondering whether you're ahead of someone else, you begin asking whether you're becoming a better version of who you were yesterday. Instead of measuring success by applause, you begin measuring it by peace of mind. Instead of chasing appearances, you start protecting your purpose. Those shifts may seem subtle, but they transform the entire direction of a person's life because they move the center of gravity from the outside world back to where it belonged, within. I've discovered that some of life's greatest victories never receive public recognition. They happen when someone refuses to give up after years of disappointment. They happen when a person finds the courage to begin again after believing it was too late. They happen when someone finally realizes the burden of trying to impress strangers and begins investing the same energy into becoming healthier, wiser, kinder, and more authentic. Those victories rarely trend online, yet they possess a value that no amount of public applause can replace. The world will always offer another standard. Believe that. Another comparison, another reason to believe you're falling behind. If you allow it, you'll spend your entire life running toward a horizon that continues moving further away every time you approach it. It's found in recognizing that you never belonged in that race to begin with. Perhaps the most important lesson hidden beneath all of this is that your life was never intended to become a copy of anyone else's success story. Long before society handed you its expectations, your journey had already begun taking shape. Your experiences, your disappointments, your victories, your losses, and even your unanswered questions became part of a story unlike any other on earth. To abandon that story in pursuit of someone else's version of success isn't ambition, it's surrender, and it's very foolish. The truth is that no one can accurately measure a life from the outside. We don't know the silent battles another person fights every day. We don't know what they sacrifice to arrive where they are. We don't know what keeps them awake at night or what private regrets they carry behind every smile. Yet we continue making judgments based on fragments, convincing ourselves that someone else's visible chapter tells the complete story. It never has, and it never will. What makes your life meaningful isn't how quickly you reached a destination. It's who you became while traveling the road. Character isn't developed by arriving early. Wisdom isn't awarded for keeping pace with strangers. Fulfillment isn't reserved for those who check every cultural box before an arbitrary birthday. Those ideas belong to a society addicted to appearances, not truth. When you finally release the impossible burden of keeping up with everyone else, something remarkable happens. You begin noticing blessings that comparison had hidden before your view. Gratitude replaces constant evaluation. Curiosity replaces fear. Purpose begins replacing performance. Instead of asking whether your life looks impressive enough to satisfy the world, you begin asking whether it's honest enough to satisfy your own conscience. That's where genuine peace begins. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you've stopped fighting a battle that never belonged to you in the first place. Your life has never been behind. It has simply been waiting for you to stop looking over your shoulder long enough to recognize that the road beneath your own feet has been enough all along. I hope you have enjoyed and embraced the words I shared. I often think of things like this, and when they pop into my head, I have to share it because I know maybe it might help somebody else refine their view of their life. I'm accelerating at such a fast pace right now, at such a fast rate, more so than ever before, because I have the peace and solitude to be able to go through every lesson I've learned, the current lessons, the ones in the past, and I will embrace those in the future. So as they come in and I assess them and understand them, I'll be right here to share them. That's why you have to make sure to sign up with your email address to LanceScurvX.com, because whatever's going on in my life, I'll sincerely share it. It's not about gossip. It's not about showing off possessions. It's about sharing my ascension in the things that I've learned. And if you already know it, fine. But if you didn't, then it's all the better. We can grow together, because you know what? So many people have helped me grow. So many people have given me the tough lessons, and I understood them, and I embraced them. And I will continue to do so. So until next time, much love to you all. LanceScurv out. Peace.